Okay, we are live. Let's see. So who's leading this? I can lead it, or whoever, I don't care.
Go for it. You're doing great.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so first things first, we need to summarize the case. Actually, quick question. Am I like, when someone else talks, am I the only person showing up on the screen, or do the people pop up who's talking on your end?
When you are talking, all I see is you. And then when somebody else talks, then they pop up.
They pop up? Okay, because for whatever reason, my screen is stuck on me. I'm like, I don't want it to be me the whole time. Okay, just making sure. Okay, so I can go ahead and read what I have for the summarizing of the case. And if you guys agree with what I have or whatever, then I can just copy and paste it to the Google Docs so you don't have to like frantically type all of the notes. Who was it again? Was it you, Andrea, who signed up to do that? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I'm totally going to butcher all of these names, so forgive me. Okay, so I just did bullet points. Gosh, Mama. I have no idea. I'm just going to call him M, the little boy. Was wounded as a result of a rocket attack while playing in his doorway in Gaza. Is it pronounced Gaza?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He fractured a rib and a piece of the rocket got into his lung. He appeared to be recovering. 4 years prior to this incident, his older brother, Ahmed, was killed in the doorway by a rocket. After Ahmed's death, Osama, the father, lost his job because of poor health. They lived off of international assistance and help from extended family. I just made note that Arabs consider sons to be valuable. One daughter needed psychiatric care because she struggled with anger. One son asked for a gun because he wanted to seek revenge on the Israelis for killing his brother. And Osama had another son whom he named Ahmed after his son who died. He doesn't feel there's anyone or thing that could help or that could make up for the loss of his son. And the family has a picture of the lost son that has been altered to show him in a cap and gown, the college graduation that he never had. So those are the main points that I brought up. Is there something that I missed that you guys think?
I think that you covered it pretty well. I think the only other thing that I had in there was that he had 2 kidney operations.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, let's throw that in there because that's important.
And did you mention both that he was living off welfare and that his daughter needed psychiatric help? Sorry, I may have missed that.
Yeah, I did mention that they were living off of the international assistance, and then that his daughter needed psychiatric care.
Okay.
Let me find the Google Doc real quick. Let's go on. Okay, so I'll paste what I had, and then we'll add I'll add the kidney operation real quick. So the next thing, list any principles or concepts from the course that can be applied in offering help or direction for this family. Somebody wants to share what they had.
I can share.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I think I missed that when I made the
That was
Google Doc. I think I missed that bullet point.
You can go.
Okay, well, maybe you can fill in where I missed, but the main thing I thought of that would help any family in a crisis, or this family in particular, gain some direction or some ideas of how they can help each other, is from last week's chapter when I was reading about resilience and about how that resilience will grow during a crisis as they learn to manage the situation in a meaningful way. And that usually happens with coming up with a solid plan of, where are we going to go? And you can tell that their situation is probably a little bit hectic and crazy, not knowing what's going to happen. And I guess that'll go a little bit more into the risks and dangers of his son, Ahmed, and the daughter, what type of help are they going to be able to receive in the long run? But so just a couple of things that one thing I really liked is that a crisis can lead a family to ask questions and to make a plan for the future. So during this opportunity, one principle that they can learn is that they can stop, ask questions, figure out where they need to go, and then one part that I really liked too was expressing love and appreciation for one another, and helping the others, realizing their strengths can really build their resiliency to the situation, to the crisis. And those were just a couple of thoughts that I had.
That's what I put too. I put the family resiliency model. And I feel like especially in this, we don't really understand what he's going through, which I feel like was kind of hard for me when trying to figure out what kind of model is. We don't usually, have airstrikes coming our way or anything like that, or some of us maybe have lost someone close to us. But I feel like exactly what you said. I think if they were to follow that, they'd be able to bounce back and be able to help them get through, especially with his son. So I think you hit it spot on.
Okay, I wasn't able to edit for a minute while you were talking, so I got some of that, but you can look over that and add a little bit more too about the resiliency that you were talking about. Let's see. I thought it was interesting reading the extra reading when it was talking about perceiving grief as a process, meaning reconstruction, and taking into account that after you go through a loss, you don't just try and get back to where you were. You have to create a new narrative. And so instead of just being sad all the time that things weren't the way that they are, or weren't the way that they were anymore, being able to see what good can come out of your lives now and make some changes. So I thought that there was some kind of interesting stuff in that article.
Yeah, I didn't have much different. I talked about the resilience model and things that they could draw on, like the different processes that they could do, like making meaning of what happened, looking for positive, looking at the big picture, etc. Things that you guys have already kind of touched on. And then I've just brought up the family typology model. Obviously, I'm not very familiar with the culture, but I just think being able to recognize that, what resources you use, how your family is, how you perceive an event, and all of these things kind of combine to turn into your overall experience. Just recognizing that each of those plays a part could help a family avoid a crisis situation. And obviously, kind of made note of this everywhere. They're kind of in the middle of a crisis. War is crisis in my eyes, but just as a family unit, avoiding crisis, recognizing different parts of the family typology model might help them avoid that. So anyway, that's the only thing kind of different that I added.
Yeah, I liked that too, because when they talked about how different people reacted, it seemed like, there were some people on the front lines of war that were able to strengthen their relationship and not be affected as much because of their typology. So I think that's a really good thing to add. Good point.
Okay, so moving on to the next topic. List relevant risks or dangers the family and its members face. I mean, the only things I couldn't really think outside the box with this. Obviously, they all risk physical injury because they're in this war zone. But aside from that, they're definitely at risk for a lot of psychological damage, PTSD, depression, anxiety, like all of that, just from being in a war. But definitely like PTSD and anxiety just from already having lost a son. All of them are at risk for that. And then of course, they just risk entering like crisis mode as a family, just pile up from losing their son to another being injured, the daughter needing psychiatric care, dad being sick and losing work, all of that stuff can really make or break a family. Oh, that's all I put. Did anyone else have something different?
Oh, and it seemed.
Oh, go ahead, Trevor.
Well, I was going to mention that, and not just that those things happened and now it's worried like, oh, now, my son was injured, but the fact of what's going to happen in the future, what type of health care are they going to have for this son who's now got his lung punctured? Is he going to be able to heal from that? Is she going to be able to continue in psychiatric care? And will the dad be able to find proper work? It seems like those risks of there's a lot of what ifs. They don't know what's going to happen or what type of things that they're going to have to rely on in the future.
Yeah, I put going into like a depression mode, just kind of like what you said, their son's death, as well as maybe from illness, since the father did have to get those 2 surgeries. Like you said, physical death. I mean, they're at risk for danger. That. And that's pretty much, that's all I put.
I kind of wondered about naming their son the same name, and if that would have an effect on that younger boy, kind of looked at as a memory of, his brother. Would that cause some problems for him, feeling like, being sort of a replacement or the memorial to a brother? I don't know the culture very well, so maybe that
Yeah,
well.
I definitely thought about the same thing. I put it that into some other thing. I can't remember where I put it, but
okay.
It's hard to know because we don't really know the culture. Like, are they totally gonna, because obviously like the dad said that there's nothing that can really, even though they had another son and they named him after him, like there's nothing that can really replace that loss, which is true. But it's like, is that the new son going to be like a disappointment somehow? Or is the fact that he's named after his brother like an honor? Like, I just have no idea because I don't know the culture. But I mean, in America, I feel like it would be like what you said, like the son would be kind of sad. I don't know, like a disappointment because he's not his brother, Yeah. Anyway, definitely interesting. I wish I knew more about that, but I don't. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Does anybody have anything to add for that one? Okay. So list relevant opportunities presented to this family as a result of the crisis. So, I think this is where I put that, like, so obviously they had this other son, which is great. I didn't really find very many opportunities. So I was really stretching here, but like that might have been an opportunity for healing in some way, since they lost a son, they still gained a son. But still, like, I have no idea just because of the culture. And then this is more of just a resource that was made available to them, but the ability for them to use the international assistance. But I really have no idea what other opportunities they had as a result of this. So please enlighten me if anybody thought of anything.
I thought I read also in that additional reading thing how like grieving as a culture is a big thing for them. And so I can't remember how they said it, but it sounded like they said collective meaning for the community. So if you'd lost someone and were able to grieve with other people, that might give you some way to be able to reach out to other people or feel a connection at least. I don't know if that is considered an opportunity, but it is something that they mentioned at least.
Also I think it said that a brother helped out, I think, a little bit. Owns that company, and I think it said something about someone's brother helping him out. So out of the box that I stuck out to.
One opportunity, opportunities presented to the family as a result of the crisis. I like the words that it used in the reading. It called it a call to consciousness, that the entire experience as a whole could, I guess, in a way, make or break the family. It could really bring them all together and realize that out of all of that, it could have gone a lot worse than it did, and that they were able to survive, and that they're still surviving and can make it through if they pull together. And I'm sure it made them think about how precious life is, and maybe some changes, whether it's leaving the country or the area of protecting their family and looking out for one another. That's all I had.
I like that.
Okay, I like that too. So next thing, no important relationship considerations. Does anybody want to start with this one?
Anything? I don't think they mentioned the wife at all, but it seems like she was involved. She was in the picture, right?
That's what I assumed, but I don't know. Who knows? I'm guessing that if he had lost his wife too, they would have mentioned it. So,
I mean, it said that they had another son, so obviously.
Oh yeah, duh.
Yeah. Maybe that's a cultural thing too, is to not talk about their relationship or her, but it seems like that would be hard on a marriage, all of that trauma. So I would think their relationship would be something to worry about.
One thing that I put, obviously, like, all of the relationships really are at risk, but one thing in the reading was that parents in like the high exposure areas had a hard time with parenting. And so that puts, the parent-child relationship at risk. And then this is another spot that I put in. Again, I don't know if it's really a risk factor, but the fact that the youngest son was named after his brother and all that, like, that could be a risk. I don't really know because I don't know the culture, but those are a couple things that I added.
Child relationship too. I think the father and the daughter with the psychiatric kind of care, I guess, I think that would be really hard, especially in this crisis where his other son was injured and all that was happening. I feel like that would be really hard on him too, because he had very poor illness or something like that. I think that relationship would definitely be stretched in some way or another.
For sure.
Another thing I added just for the whole spousal relationship, and again, like, I'm not familiar with the culture, but just I would imagine that being amidst all of this would kind of make things hazy. And so for a wife to be like in the middle of a war zone and then her husband is sick and can't work and can't provide, like all of that might cause some resentment in a way, even though it's not his fault. So that's another way that their relationship would be at risk. It's just the financial stress and all
Sort
that
of
stuff.
blaming other people too, whose fault is it?
Yeah, for sure. Any other thoughts in that category?
I think maybe, I don't know if this counts in relationship considerations, but just the husband feeling depressed because he's not able to protect his kids and provide for them. So just his mental health could be at risk.
Yeah, and that would affect all of the relationships for sure. Okay, so recommended coping strategies. Good segue. First thing I put was just the father working on mood logs. I feel like looking way back to mood logs. Don't know that they would do that in their culture, but I'm sure, I mean, especially when it comes to his son's death, it still seems to really bothering him. And this interview was 4 years after his death. So, I don't know, being able to change his perception a little bit to something more, being able to see the positives instead of focusing on all the negatives.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree. I put if they had the means to go to a therapist, mostly the father too, because of the death of his son. So I guess that could be added onto it too. As well, I think is like more family councils. I know that's kind of, I don't know if that's what they do in their culture, like get together and talk about things. But I said, I feel like it's been 4 years and haven't son. So I think being able to talk it out with each other, I don't know how close they are as a family, might work for them to just talk it out.
I think that that's really important. Also, one thing I read that they mentioned was a lot of times they don't, like you said, they don't want to talk about their pain in front of the other person because they don't want to make it worse. So maybe talking to a therapist individually could help that too, as well as, increasing their communication with each other and be able to work through that together.
Mine was very family oriented stuff, like just coming together, spending a lot of time together as they're healing through the process, and then a lot of planning as well, like kind of going back to the ABCX model, where you look outside and see what resources you have, what other family do you have that you can look to and rely on, to come up with a plan, so it's not just sort of huddled together with the little resources you have, but make a list of possible jobs, possible doctors or hospitals or care that can make sure that the boy is able to make it through the situation.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that I added that they kind of already did, I guess I just wanted to point it out. In the extra reading, I had kind of skimmed through it, and one thing that they, I guess, is kind of big in that culture is creating some kind of memorial helps the family grieve. So when I first read that they like digitally altered his picture with like a cap and gown, I was like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like, that's how they still feel connected to their deceased children, is by doing things like that. So that's definitely not something I would have recommended, but it's something that they did, and I'm sure that that's helped them somehow.
I had the same thought as when they mentioned that. I'm like, that doesn't seem healthy, but yeah, I guess it is part of the culture, and it can be a coping mechanism.
It's interesting. I've actually seen people do that before, but it's been them as a missionary. Like they've got a name tag and stuff. So for me, it was interesting to see like what, they're aspiring to. Maybe they have like this really big emphasis on education, or maybe that's really all they have. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, when you think about the loss of a son being so important, the sons being so important to their families, and that's, I mean, anytime someone loses a child, it's very hard, but it's extra hard when they place so much meaning on their sons. So.
Then another thing, I can't remember, I know I read it somewhere in something. I think it was the last group one when we learned about Zach's story or whatever. Somewhere in that reading, they just said like the hardest thing for parents when they grieve the loss of a child is that it kind of continues, because once, like, if a birthday comes and like that child turned 18 and they would have graduated, things like that, like that just makes it harder. So it would make sense that they would kind of, I don't know what the word is, but memorialize that, I guess, like him graduating, like what could have been, which I mean seems so depressing, but like we said, the culture like probably helps them out. But anyway, any other thoughts on that section? Okay. So recommendations to the supporting and involved parties. Does anybody have anything or anybody want to start, I should say?
I just I feel like the article didn't give me much to go off of, but I just put maybe searching for more resources. I don't know if they were many or anything, but I think maybe searching for help from his brother, just because I feel like he's more, and we know that his son died too. Didn't really say anything about like him being very depressed or anything about it. He kind of got over it, I guess. That's what I'm assuming anyway. His brother, and just kind of see it, or just kind of an extra help or support that's close to him, like a family member.
I like that idea of just looking for other resources. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of families in that area who have gone through similar things. Finding out, what works for people, how some of the coping mechanisms that they use, or some of the resources that they have. Yeah, I don't know. This was a tougher case study.
Yeah, I've pretty much got exactly what you guys have said. Like his brother is obviously helping financially, but he seems to be able to relate. So showing empathy can help. One thing I added was just having the extended family get together often. I don't know. Not that it's not like one family is in a safer area than the other. I imagine it's all just not safe, but gathering together, I feel like would help, especially if both sides are grieving in some way, just kind of finding that common ground.
Yeah.
And then like you said too, Andrea, looking for other families who have lost children or just lost anybody due to the war. Like, you can just find some kind of camaraderie in that. That's all I had, really.
I didn't write much on this one, but I just wrote that it would be good for them to sort of keep themselves separated from the tragedies, you know, that they're not the tragedy, they're not below anyone else, but that some bad things happened, they can accept that and then simply move on. And I think that's easier said than done. You know, sometimes we go through deaths in the family or loss of jobs and think, oh, how are we supposed to move on for that? Or, oh, we're a failure because of this or that. But just accepting that it happens and then realizing that, oh, we're not the failure. That was the situation. We just need to come up with something new and move forward.
Yeah, that's hard when they live in an area that's constantly under attack, but they need to, like you said, find ways to separate themselves from that in a way. Maybe do things that are fun with their children, or find ways to bring joy. Maybe try and bring in the past traditions that they've had for holidays or whatever, to make sure that they're still happening even while the things are going on that are really tragic and hard.
Very good, everybody. Any additional resources you would provide or suggest or provide? I couldn't think of anything. I mean, of course, professional help would be awesome, but I would imagine that's not widely available to them. I could be wrong, but yeah, I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah.
Me neither.
I don't know if psychiatric help is available, but there probably are government assistant programs or things that might help financially, at least.
Yeah. It almost seems like a bad time for him to be going back to work if he could spend some more time taking care of his kid.
Yeah.
Which would probably mean government assistance, but
Which are probably stretched to the max in the whole area if everyone's suffering the same kind of issues.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, does anybody have anything they want to add about anything? Any of the different categories or whatever? Let's see if I have. Oh, one thing I noted that I didn't share. One thing, and I put this under like principles or concepts that can be applied in offering help or direction. But I feel like it could be under this last one, like additional resources. But the reading, Shammai is the author. I don't know, the like notes that we read from the thing. I can't remember. Council on Foreign Relations? I can't remember what it was. Anyway, whatever we read that was required. One thing I noted was that couples that seemed to handle the stress more were creative in the ways that they could find connection. So we've kind of already talked about that, but good job, guys, for talking about it, because it was in the reading. You just have to I imagine you have to be really creative in times like that.
And flexible. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Anything else anybody wants to add about anything?
Okay, so I've just been taking notes of people who have been talking. So if you guys would just want to go over the document too, because I haven't been able to get it all in there. Maybe I misrepresented something you were trying to say, or you wanted to add some more details. So go ahead and add to it, and we can kind of just make, and then I can submit that later today.
Sounds good. And I'll just copy and paste the link that pops up for this to the bottom of that
Perfect.
document.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
all right.
Thanks so much,
Well,
everyone.
Yes, thank you all. I'm so glad that I can't remember who created the thread, but thank you for creating it, because it's awesome to be done. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good 4th.
Yes, happy 4th of July.
Yeah.
Happy 4th. See ya.